when you're in a team environment, you as the manager are not the sole keeper of all knowledge and wisdom.
Pause for a second, because I need you to say that again, because it's really, really important for people to really get this. So as a leader,
you are not the sole keeper of all knowledge and wisdom.
Hi, and welcome to the 1 Degree Shift podcast. I'm your host, Julie Gillespie. This podcast has been designed to complement a newsletter that we're going to be putting out every month that works with leaders to help them shift their perspective, open their lens of perspective to be able to do this leadership thing a lot easier. We want to make sure that you've got the resources and the tools and those small incremental changes that you can make that have a long-term positive impact in not only how you lead, but how you feel about leading. Our first podcast, where we started off with someone that I've known for a very long time. His name's Cecil Barnard. He's a guy that I did my executive MBA with a number of years ago. And we've always spoken about leadership in a style of what's in it, what's behind it, what does it mean, what does it take, how do we do it better, how do we live it grandly, but how do we make it all-encompassing? So we've pulled it apart, put it back together again, and worked really hard over the years to get our heads around how we turn up in the space of leading. Cecil's going to take you through his background, so I'll leave that for him to be able to explain. But the reason why I wanted him to be the first podcast here is that it gives you a bit of understanding of this shift that I'm looking at, this 1 degree shift. He's undergone many degree shifts over his years, and it never ends. And I love this about Cecil is that there's always this widening of a lens, this understanding, this breadth of view that he has. Doesn't mean, and he talks about this later in the podcast, it doesn't mean that he's become a pushover and, someone who's a doormat. It means that he's become a leader that not only holds himself steady, he holds his people steady and he holds his community steady. I really look forward to all of these podcasts. We'll be doing a few through the year as it makes sense to, the newsletter content that we're putting through. We always love your feedback. We always want to understand what more we can be doing in this space of helping people transform the way they connect. That's why we're here. We want to talk about connection. All the best. Enjoy the podcast. It's so rich and there's so much in it. And do connect in with Cecil if you do want to find out more about what he's seen, where he's been, and, the ideas that he's come up with. He's very generous, in his information and his knowledge. So thank you for joining me. Enjoy the podcast. Hey, I'd like to welcome you, Cecil, into the conversation.
Thank you, Julie.
We have spoken a lot over the years about leadership. We did our executive MBA together a number of years back. So it's been the focal point, the common ground, the things that we like to kind of pull apart and get to understand together. And I'd love for our listeners to be able to understand your path into leadership. And I want to hit on some of the themes that you've done in each of your jobs along the way, to understand the common ground that has you to where you are today as a manager of a community.
Julie, thank you. I think the only two people who knows me better than you is my Land Rover mechanic and my wife. I'm not really sure if that is a good order. People will pick up from my accent that I was not born in Australia. I was born in South Africa in the Afrikaner or the Boer tribe, which were the people that the Australians fought with the English in the Anglo-Boer War. So my family is quite mixed in the sense we are truly multicultural. We are a bit Scottish, a bit Dutch, a bit German, and a bit Shona. And then somewhere in my father's side, there are Jewish ancestors as well. So,
Wow.
Which is makes me a person with a very exciting culinary tastes.
Yes.
Back in the day, when I was still a young man, military, because of the government system of apartheid, which is now thankfully gone, there was conscription for all body-abled white men. You had no choice. When you turn 16, you have to go to the army for 2 years. You could extend it, so most people extended you could postpone joining while you're at school, or in my case, until I finished university, which was a really good thing. The military taught me, a bit like Joko Willink, about discipline, is that discipline is an extremely important part. You cannot expect your team to perform and finish a task if you are not disciplined and if you do not transfer that discipline to them. So for me, small things like being on time, it's non-negotiable. My time is valuable. My team's time is valuable as well. And if somebody is late, that person disrespects the other people.
So discipline, in your view, is the rules of respect.
The rules of respect, yes.
Okay.
But also, if you say the report will be here on Friday morning, the report will be there, unless there was a hurricane or somebody important passed away.
Floods, fire, like
floods,
welcome to Australia.
Welcome to Australia. So the military taught me that, but the military also taught me something else that many people don't necessarily talk about. And that is the horror of war.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go too much into it because it's not a pity party. I have learned how powerful it can be if you are in a position of power and you have the might to destroy people. You can see, I have fairly strong points of view on what's happening in Gaza.
Yeah.
Although my point of view will be considered right-wing.
But how has that shaped what you then did? Because that's a powerful honing and shaping and forming moments, collection of moments, isn't it?
True. When I was a young man, at university, there were lots of protests against apartheid. And parts of it I found annoying because students would burn down a library. Why the hell do you burn down a library? I mean, that serves no purpose. Yeah, that serves no purpose. And during the protest, I was a progressive student, or I am a fairly progressive person. The police whipped us well. And if you were not fast enough, you were caught and thrown in jail.
Yeah.
So then I said, okay, I can go into my life being on the secret police list, having been in jail, so that go onto your record in South Africa, because nobody at that time knew that it would come to an end. We just thought it would be going on forever.
Yeah.
And then I said, the way I can change the world is not by fighting it from the outside, but fighting it from the inside. So those days I was a town planner, and I joined the government service. And I said, I will fight apartheid by being a good human, working as a town planner that services Black communities, Black as in Black people.
And we spoke of this once before, and what you wanted to achieve through that, I think, is true leadership. Yeah. So why did you want to do that specifically?
Because I think that true leadership does not do evil. True leadership does good, even if it's hard. I recall one thing very specifically. We had a roadblock, and that time the country was in a war. So let's accept that. There was a roadblock, and an African family, Black people, stopped with a Valiant, and the white soldier went and he slammed the machine gun's barrel through the window, breaking the window for no purpose. And I was the lieutenant, the guy was a recruit or a soldier. After the incident, I called him away and I disciplined him. Yeah. I said to him, why did you do that? What was the purpose of your action? So for me, leadership is something that you need to be able to make a hard decision.
Yeah.
You also need to be unpopular. I mean, it's not a popularity contest. I'm not, sadly, Taylor Swift. Although I don't particularly enjoy her music. For me, it was then I started to overcompensate I think, by being extremely good and kind to other people, specifically Black people, because they were treated so poorly in the system.
Yeah.
And when I became a town planner for the provincial government in South Africa, it's provinces. In Australia, it's states. I became a rebel inside the system and say, but you cannot just go to an African community, to a village, and say to the village, we are going to put a road through here because you need a road. Nobody, and the example I think I used with you, they went to a town and they put through roads, and every night the bulldozers and the graders were burnt.
Yeah.
Then I went to the community and said, but nobody's got cars. We don't want a road. We want blocks of land. They don't need. They wanted blocks of land to build churches on. And I said, why don't we listen to the community? They don't have a need for a road. The Jeep track that's there is suitable. So I started becoming a bit of an antagonist inside the system, but it changed the way we do things. Yeah. And that started, and I think it was 1990, 1991, which gives away my age. We actually started consulting with the community.
Yeah.
So the government went out to the Black community and say, we want to put a road, or we want to bring water here. What do you want?
Yeah.
Most of the things, the people were very happy, but they were consulted. And that is for me a very important part. And I took that into the rest of my life. I rather quickly left the government service. The government changed from the apartheid government to democratic government. They, with all their decisions, got rid of most white men, which was a fine decision. And then I still, in the roles that I did, I made a decision, and I don't want to go, oh, look at me, I'm so good. I just made the principled decision that whatever I do will look at the greater good of things. And it was always, I won't say always, but it was sometimes really, really hard. Yeah. I will use one example. I had a small company like you. I had 15 employees, and I was asked to do the development and environmental application for a servo, for a filling station. And the bloke wanted the servo in what we call a wetland. And I said, no, you cannot put a servo in a wetland. What about pollution? And he said, mate, we just pay the government. It was a big company, one of the major oil companies in South Africa. They just said, oh, just pay the government officials, just pay them $50,000, just pay them. I said, you cannot do it. And I refused to do that application.
You said no.
I said, no. I said, they went in the end, I said, I can find you another spot, but that is not a good spot. Obviously, I lost the contract. They found somebody who was willing to do it, and it got built and it got flooded. A
little bit of karma happening.
yeah, a slight bit of karma. I'm not.
But it's a hard thing to do, saying no because it's the right thing to do. I mean, that's tough.
I mean, I'm not sure if you have had that experience. I would lie at night in South Africa. People get paid every month at the end of the month and wonder how on earth I'm going to pay my staff. Yeah. Because you have invoices
and rent, and amenities,
and amenities, and your mobile phone,
yeah,
etc., etc. So for me, that was a very important part. Is that I don't like using the word moral, but I always thought clearly about before I made a decision. And
it's
think,
ethical.
How will it?
It sits in that ethical. You've not allowed ethical fade to happen, where you've made those small little compromises till you're at a point where you accept the bribe. Yeah. Like you've kept an ethical standpoint, because even though when it's really, really hard to do.
Yep. And one of the things that when I started in 1991, my own business, my father, who has been an entrepreneur all his life, he said to me, whatever you do in Africa, because he was one of the very first white Afrikaans men who worked in Africa during apartheid, because our family has a safari business. And he said to me, you never pay a bribe. You never pay a bribe, because the moment you do it, you break the license with you break the license with yourself on ethics. And I never thought about it that, because I mean, I've made many mistakes, and too many tequilas are one of them. But if you break that agreement with yourself, it's very hard to fix.
I think so. Because then, you know, and coming into Australia then and sticking in town planning, it was such a different space to be in. And we've spoken about this, is that you didn't get this opportunity to be able to make positive impact for a community, because like Australia is very rule-based, compliance-based and things like that. So the ability to live in this space of, you know, creating a better community wasn't there, even though you'd think that was the primary spot for it.
Yeah. I moved into what I call development assessment. So you look at planning applications and you review it against the planning scheme and you come to a decision, a conclusion. I found it extremely hard grinding. There was very little leeway. The rules are set. Australia is a rule-based society, which is also good. I don't have, in principle, a problem with it. But it does, in a certain sense, and I think to a big extent in town planning, it takes away creativity completely. I've always also, not always, I have recently said that the first professional role after lawyers and accountants that AI will eat up is town planning. You don't need to think to do town planning the Australian way. But what I found is that in my first place of employment, which was Yeppoon, Livingston Shire Council, is I had to deal with a lot of young people. So people 10, 15 years younger than me. Our fresh out of university with stars in their eyes, and very complex personalities. People who didn't want to make decisions, although it's their job to make a decision, but they didn't want, and you had to lead them to make decisions. I couldn't take their job and then make a decision on their behalf, because that's not right. So for me, coming to Australia, the first 3 years was a massive learning curve. Specifically coming from an entrepreneur working for yourself to working for a local government, where you have the politicians to answer, you have the CEO to answer, and then all the rules and regulations that fits into it. And if you have that, but next to it on this side, you have humans, and you have individual persons, people with individual identities and ideologies that they attach to. I mean, I had from far right-wing young people to extreme left-wing people who were carrying Karl Marx's little handbook around, thinking that the world will be perfect if it's a communist society. And I had to deal with all of them in the framework of a council, which was it was a really hard learning curve. But in the end, I actually really enjoyed it.
Well, and now where you're, you know, leading the Department of a Communities Department and Council, where, you know, the role and responsibility of creating a better community is your purview. You know, it's not planning, it's not the groundworks of things, it's the experiential base. And you've got a huge landmass where, you know, that you look after, once again, with all of those different types of people.
True. I have to say, just to for the record, is that this is my personal point of view. What I'm telling you has got nothing to do with my employer, and I also will not identify them.
No.
Working with a community is completely the complete part of town planning. Because you take the community into consideration with things that you do, and you take them into consideration to a great level. We are engaging with and working with fantastic professionals in the other side, people who are consultants who do community consultation, and we get them in. And consultation with the community adds at least 6 months to a project. But the outcome of the project is so much better. There is for me simply no logic about pushing a project without consulting with the community first.
Yeah.
Previously in South Africa, we did that. We learned a painful lesson. But people don't always believe your former or your historical experience. But here we have learned, not only here at this organization, but at other organizations in Queensland, is that sometimes the local government wants to do something and they just do it, and it never works. It never works. But
I
if
think
you
that's
take
in every organization, in every, like, no matter where we're looking at. And so what I want to sit on and look into now is the work that you've done to understand your leadership style, because we've been speaking about this for a very long time. And it's why I wanted to talk to you about this, Cecil, because you've worked really, really hard to take all of those experiences, that understanding, the groundwork, the learnings during the executive MBA, but still continue to learn to find a way that works for you and provides an inclusion for your people. So I just want to kind of sit in that, what are some of the things that you've done to understand your leadership style that you've found to be of most benefit?
Ironically, back in the day, long time ago, I can't remember whether it was when I was still at university or in the army. It was before the days of the internet, that I do remember. Somebody came to me with a Myers-Briggs personality type questionnaire. And nowadays, I laughed the other day, somebody said Myers-Briggs is to personality types what astrology is to the world of to your life experience. But that is where it started. And I said, oh, this explains to me why I am completely different than that person who's also a town planner.
Yeah.
And that, when I was a young person in the government service, I asked to go on leadership courses.
Yeah.
And that opened my mind. And then I met some people in the academic world in Pretoria, professors who were psychologists, and they specified in environmental, specialized in environmental psychology. And through them, I learned about personality types, and that how you can regulate yourself, not change yourself, but regulate yourself so that you can understand other people. And that just grew. And as I became a business owner and I had to deal with staff, and I moved to Australia and I had to deal with team members, I started to read more and more about leadership. And then I did every possible course, because my leadership style always stood out as extrovert, high risk taker, moving fast, and which was frowned upon in the government service. They wanted to be people, they didn't mind extrovert, but they want to be a person who's have a very low risk taking attitude, people who consider things thoroughly before you jump out of the blocks. And that has caused me to really learn about how other people think and how other people react. And then I think, as many people, when TEDx became a thing, we all watched Simon Sinek, the ask the why, and the leaders eat last. And those things, while it may sound ironic, had actually a good influence, a very strong influence on me. So for me, is that when you're in a team environment, you as the manager are not the sole keeper of all knowledge and wisdom.
Pause for a second, because I need you to say that again, because it's really, really important for people to really get this. So as a leader,
you are not the sole keeper of all knowledge and wisdom.
What a relief, though.
Oh yeah, thank the good Lord for that. Really, imagine everybody expected of you as the leader or the manager to have all the knowledge. I mean, that would be frightful.
But I think this is where a lot of people start. I know, coming out of university, and I thought, right, now I've got all of the knowledge. I'm going to run this business. And I was working with my dad at the time. He went, "Oh no, honey."
yeah, true.
You might have the words, but you haven't applied them yet. So you just go and do that. But to be not have to be the keeper and to be able to go, oh, cool, this isn't about me.
True.
Changes things, doesn't
it? Indeed. And one of the wonderful things I have learned, and that comes out of Simon Sinek's one talk of Leaders Eat Last. And that is, if there is a problem or a issue that you need to solve, and you walk into a meeting with your people and you say, this is the problem and this is my solution, you've stopped the meeting, you've shut down everyone. And I say, good leaders talk last and good leaders eat last.
Yeah.
And I have forcefully started doing it with myself. Yeah. I would like, just before our meeting, I had a team meeting about staff appointments and things like that. I said, this is where we are. What's your point of view? And it really works well, because people feel comfortable and safe to raise their point of view.
But you've done work towards that. This isn't just okay, today I've always given them my thoughts first, and now today's a new day, so I'm going to ask for theirs. That doesn't work. So the in-between stuff that you do to be able to give people the idea and knowing that they can speak before you do, they can have an idea before you do. It's a perspective shift, right?
It is a massive perspective shift. And I think that perspective shift for me happened when I moved to Australia.
Yeah.
In South Africa, the circle of town planners are even smaller than here. Yeah, it's much smaller. I think there's about 2,000 in the entire country. I was quite well known because of my extravagant points of view and my sort of arrogant shoveling around at conferences. When I came here, I was nobody. People couldn't pronounce my name. And I think I've shared the story with you. One guy asked me, did you get your qualification in a Kellogg's box? And I was really angry about that, because I went to the best town planning school in South Africa. Yeah. So I learned the hard way that I am not the only, as I said before, I'm not the keeper of wisdom. I'm not the keeper at the gates of wisdom and of knowledge. And I learned to listen to people who may have knowledge. So my staff members, the one who's a librarian, Chris, who's the librarian, I don't know anything about libraries except for the fact that I like books.
Yeah.
So ask her the question. Learn from people. That is why I'm absolutely in love with podcasts. I learn every time I listen. And for me, it is a continuous journey to learn.
But that starts with curiosity, because I think that turning into a team and asking them for their ideas and their opinions, there's this, oh, okay, so if I'm not the keeper, who are the keepers? And what do they know that I don't know? What are the gaps that I'm not aware of? And the only people that can point out the gaps of my knowledge are these people who I've actually given a job to because they're good at what they do. So that turn, that shift into actually, no, I'm not the expert here. They are, let them speak.
True.
That small degree shift, that small, minute thing can be practiced every single day, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of these podcast wizards or people with lots of wisdom that tell you, don't change the world in one day, change one thing in a day. Yeah. And I started to do that. And it was because I was working with other really smart, hard-headed professional people who didn't take any nonsense from me. And and specifically the previous lady who was the library coordinator, Lisa Hart. I mean, she took no nonsense from me, and she's very intelligent and she's really good with what she did. And she taught me to shut up and to listen.
Yeah.
I've always had it in my mind. I've always done it in my family. But in most circumstances now, I just listen. So a lot of it, and I'm not sure if there is a gender difference, but to letting go of your ego.
I think it's hard for, and I'd love to put it in male, female as well, but I think it's hard for anyone that's driven to do so, because it's like, God, if my ego's not out front, how do I drive so hard? How do I push so hard if that's not the thing that's there, keeping me focused and keeping me protected in case I fail? Like, I think it's both male and female. That's what I've really come to understand.
As you know, I have failed in many things in my life. There's two things I'm really glad I didn't fail at, and one was parachuting and the other one was deep sea diving, because then I would not have been here. But one of the things that is critical for me, and I really dislike using say me all the time, but
that's why you're here, Cecil, so it's fine.
Okay, so I can relax.
Yeah.
And that is allowing myself to fail.
Yeah.
And allowing my team members to fail. And then the only thing we do is we learn from it. There's no criticism. There's no fingers pointed. And we have very recent examples of where we have done projects, and I won't go into detail not to identify it, where we put in a massive amount of work and it failed. And it was like 6 months worth of work put in, plus staff time, plus consultants. You add that together, it goes into 5-6 digits very, very quickly. And then you have to say, oh, this failed. And rather than blaming other people and you say, oh, this failed. I take full responsibility for the failure. Let us find out why.
Yeah.
And
the pressure's off everyone then, because it's like, yeah, I've got it. No, this is about me. But, what have we learned? What have we got? I learned yesterday, I've got a kid going into high school. So we're doing as much stuff as we can to learn about the high school environment for kids. And there was Dr. Andrew Martin, I think his name was speaking, who's an educational psychologist. And he speaks about failure in a really interesting way of, did you work hard or did you work well?
Oh, wow. I
like
that. Yeah,
I love it.
wow.
Yeah, I'm using this one at home. And it sounds in that case is that you all worked really hard. Did you work well though? And I know you and your team, and there would have been that work well. And then it's like, okay, so if we take these things off the plate, what's left?
True. That is, I really like that you work hard or that you work well.
They're great questions because they take the judgment out. Even though it's like saying, did you work hard enough? And you're going, well, yeah, because I put this amount of effort in. Here's my planning. Here's the workload. It's like, great, well done. Did you work well though? Were you smart with your time? Were you smart with the resources that you had? Yeah, because we did these things. Great. Okay, so then what else was it?
I think many times, specifically in organizations and government, because they are so slow to change, when something goes wrong, they always want somebody to blame.
Yeah.
But sometimes things just go wrong.
Right.
I'll take a non-work related example. Imagine 2 years ago in January, you planned to take your wife to Ukraine. And while you were on the flight, the Russians invaded.
Yeah.
You didn't do anything wrong.
No.
Sometimes shit just happens. Sorry, I should have.
No, it's fine. You're talking with me.
And it's like the natural disasters.
Yeah.
There are people who lament about what has happened, but you have no control over it. And that is another thing that I have learned the hard way, but that I am mentoring my team, and you know my team.
Yes.
And that is the circle of concern and the circle of control.
Yeah.
And acknowledge what is in your circle of concern and focus on what is on the circle of control. I can control what I eat, what I drink, what I read, what I think. I can control if I exercise or not, but I cannot control what decisions the Premier or Vladimir Putin or Joe Biden make. I cannot. I have no control over it. I can just acknowledge it and say, oh, this will be interesting.
Which comes to the self-regulation point that you were talking about before. You can control how you regulate yourself and manage how you respond and react to it.
And one of the very hard things for especially I think extrovert people is to learn not to throw your toys out of the cot. When things yeah, you and me. When things don't work, is rather than going mad and kick the dog, you say, oh, okay, what happened? Review what happened. And that has brought a lot of calmness for me to my personal life, to my life as a manager and a leader, and as a person, is to not throw my toys out of the cot.
And that leads me into then getting feedback from your team and peers and things like that, that continuous improvement that you're speaking of, is that solid theme through, your leadership career. Because asking people for, how do you think it is that I'm leading? What does it sound like? What does it look like? How do you get that feedback from the people around you? So they can be really blunt with you. So they can say, hey, Cecil, pull your head in. This is not the time for it.
I make it very clear that they can. When we start, we have quarterly meetings with the entire department, which is a difficult thing considering we are so large and so geographically dispersed. I say at the beginning of the meeting, you can disagree with me. And I always make the joke. I say, I don't have a little black book that I wrote down and say, Julie said I look really stupid in a pink shirt, and then I will use it against you. I just don't do that.
No.
But the people, I allow people, and some of my team members have venomously disagreed with me.
Yeah.
And then I would say, oh, okay. And I don't have a percentage, but there's a really large percentage of that where I then said, okay, you are correct, and I'm changing my point of view. I'm changing my position. And because we do that, and I lead and mentor my direct reports to do the same with their people. So now we have the culture in our department that people can speak up. People can come to me and say, yesterday at the meeting, when you used the Friday word, there were some people who felt very uncomfortable about it. Okay, thank you. And then I apologize to the person. And now I have trimmed down my use of technical language when I do the whole community meetings, because it's not fair on people who feel affronted about it. I don't like the word insulted. That's just one of those words.
I like that.
Yeah. But the whole issue of setting the climate that people can disagree with you, and that if they disagree with you, that you actually consider what they say. Not just disagree with me and do whatever you want to do anyhow.
No.
Actually say, oh, okay, but your point of view is valid.
What that looks like, I'm sorry to interrupt, what that looks like in that point of time is that, no, I don't agree with you, Cecil. Is there this, okay, tell me more about where you're coming from?
Yeah.
So I can understand.
Yeah, explain your point of view. Okay. Susan say, really, I think that idea to show the Matrix the evening before Christmas in the open air cinema is a stupid idea. It's not a Christmas movie. I say, why don't you think it's a Christmas movie? Oh, there's too much violence, or it's American, or it's an old movie. Oh, okay. What movie do you suggest? So, excuse me, you really have to be open and willing to change your point of view.
So that's a behavioral aspect. It's all good of here, disagree with me, and here's my opinion, right? We all agree with me. Excellent. We got to put a bit of space between it. You can all disagree with me.
Yep.
What I'm going to do when you do is I'm going to maybe ask you a couple of questions to ask for clarification, so I get the opportunity to learn.
Yeah.
And then do it consistently.
That is true. That is what I do. But there is another, and but is the wrong word, but
and
B-U-T, not B-U-T-T. Sometimes people need to make hard decisions, and you cannot always have a communal decision.
No.
Sometimes the decision needs to be made, and I have had to make a few hard ones.
Mm.
You say, this is the decision to make. And this is why I'm doing it. I've listened to you, and this is where we are going. And the few times where it has happened, there were no pushback, because
Yeah.
people had the opportunity to raise their point of view. We've debated, we thought about it, and then we say, no, we cannot continue, or this is the way we will be going. But
Sounds like it takes a long time to do, though. Like, this is something that I get the pushback on from a lot of leaders, is that I don't have time for all that. So how are you like magically waving a, time wand to do it this way?
I think you need to start, and then it just becomes part of the vernacular, and people know that we discuss things. People know that we go around the room robustly, and then a decision is made. So I can tell you, our meetings, our leadership team meetings, once a fortnight is 2 hours.
Yeah.
And we make big decisions.
And you just get on with it.
And we get on with it. So you need to start, because if you don't, you have to. It's like studying an MBA. You have to put in the investment in time. You and I both know. You have to put in the investment in time, and then you get the results. You cannot just say, oh, we're not going to try it because it will take too much time. So why do you even consider it?
I think that's a really interesting point, is that there needs to be this investment in time. It's learning a new language, it's learning a new skill set. Just as, we did go off and do our, executive MBA, to be able to then come back and go, I can now implement that, and it's going to feel a bit clunky at first, but I'm going to find efficiencies in it. We're going to find efficiencies in it.
Yeah.
And then we're going to trust each other to just do the job.
And there you use a beautiful expression: trust each other to do the job.
Yeah.
And there's a Australian bloke, Martin Moore. He's got a podcast. Oh my goodness, Your CEO Mentor.
Yes.
And he used to be the CEO from CS Energy, but he's a sort of a blokish bloke. And I did a program through him, through this work, sort of as a refresher of leadership and MBA. And he said two things that I really keep in mind. In every project, there's one head to pat and one ass to kick. That's the one person. Yeah. There's no communal responsibility. There's a single person responsible. And the second thing is, you never dip down. Mm-hmm. So if my team members, and all of them, if person A is doing a project, I don't take over that job unless the person falls ill, which has happened recently. A person falls ill, and then I had to step in to take. You don't do their work, because the first thing is you break trust.
Yeah.
And if a person is clearly not performing, that's a completely different story. Then you have to deal with the performance issue. So those are two things that I find that I found very helpful, that I learned from him.
But what have you done then to get your people to the point where you can trust them to do their job? Because that takes a bit of effort.
It takes a bit of effort, but you give them hard, challenging projects to do, and you allow them to fail. And if they fail, then you do you dissect the carcass and you say, what went wrong? You don't get rid of the person. You say, what went wrong?
Yeah. So this is like everybody. Did you work hard? Did you work hard? Did you work well? Kind of thing.
Yeah. Then you say, and then everybody learns from it.
Yeah.
And then people say, don't have an adverse reaction of something that went wrong. Then they start to trust you by coming to you and say, I want a challenging project.
Or they start coming to you and say, hey, I've recognized that this is a place where it went wrong last time. Can you just walk me through? And, there might be a skill set. So instead of you having to fill other people's gaps, they're coming to you and say, hey, I've got a gap. Can you help me fill it?
Yeah, true.
See, there's a time saver.
And then they also go to each other, because now we're a group of people. We don't compete. We work together. And that is in all organizations, whether it's a public organization like this or a for-profit organization, there's inevitable silos. So the wheelbarrow team starts to compete with the spades team. And then they start to compete with the marketing team, but they all forget that they are supposed to manufacture and sell garden equipment.
Yeah.
And we don't have, we have worked really, really hard not to have that.
Yeah. No, I love it. So I want to be able to leave our listeners, viewers with some information, like something that they can take away. And I want to get back to your hats because I love it. And in speaking to all of your team and their reflections of your, hat work, your hat dance, it's really being quite effective in terms, if we talk about psychological safety for a point of that first stage of inclusion safety, to be able to then walk through, once we've got inclusion safety, we've then got learner safety, being able to fail, then being able to, go through all of these other aspects of it, of contributing, contributor safety, to the point that you're actually challenged, so there's challenger safety. And, to be able, you've got those aspects there, of psychological safety, and they're functional working within your team. Is it right all the time? Of course not. We can't be perfect.
Yeah.
But there's the mechanism and the infrastructure for it to be well and for recovery and robustness to happen. And I think that the HATS activity is the starting point of it, but also shows continuity of care. So can you just take us through, because it's the Edward de Bono's 7 HATS theory, isn't it?
Yeah, that is. Yeah.
So can you take us through how you do that?
So as you know, we do events and we do programs for the community. So every time when there's something new, we have to develop something new, we bring the HATS in. Or when a member of the public or a councillor say, oh, we should have a project where the community can make their own ice cream cones. We bring it to the table and we say, this is the proposal, or this is the challenge. Let us discuss. And then we start. We say, creativity, new ideas.
Yeah.
Can you see?
No.
Oh,
there we go. Green thinking hat.
Yeah. So we put the green hat in the middle. And then everybody, you can't criticize, you can't interrupt, you cannot say it won't work. You just look at creativeness. And we write it on a big sticky note. And you go around, and I always start with the sort of middle person, not a most junior person, but a person sort of middle in the ranks, and go around, and then the coordinators and myself speak last. Then we go to the next one, and then the next one is information. What information do we have?
Yeah.
So then you say, okay, so there's a request from the councillors, they want it every Saturday, blah, blah, blah. You write it down, then you discuss that, everybody has it. So we go through the whole process. And then at the end, you have all that, everybody in the room had the opportunity to contribute. And then we say, okay, what are we going to do? And then we start to make decisions. And it is not clunky, it is actually incredibly creative. We deliver a writers' festival in beginning of the year in March, called Words Out West. And that's how we deal with many issues there, because it's very challenging. It's you have to bring well-known writers and authors from elsewhere to a regional area. You have to get people to support you. But we use this process to go through it. And it really works well. That is one thing for me that really works well. We don't always use it because we are now so used to using it that it just happens automatically. You don't have to have the HATS there.
But you've done the practice and you've played with it, and you've found the efficiencies and within it and the practice, and now it's just habit. You've got the triggers there for the habit to work.
Yeah. And the one thing that, because I'm an extrovert and I'm loud and I'm obnoxious,
which why I love you so much, Cecil.
In a discussion of this, I always notice who are the quiet ones.
Yeah.
And I ask them, I pull them out of their cocoon of safety and say, but what is your point of view? And you don't criticize the person, you don't joke about it, you just say, what is your point of view? I really would like to know, what do you think? And another thing that goes hand in hand, but it is slightly separate. I say to people, what are you really afraid of doing? And
Mm.
one of the smart young ladies in our team said she hates public speaking. I said, but have you done it? She says, no, I've never done it, but I think I'll hate it. So I nominated her to go and speak at the Queensland Library Association. And she got a standing ovation.
Yeah.
She did. She's
Yeah, she's very smart.
Millennial. She's very smart.
Yeah.
She did the presentation and she used video and sound. It was just fabulous.
Yeah.
And she came back and she thanked me and she said, this was such a beautiful learning. And now she's not afraid anymore.
Well, but without you being there, she actually said to me the same things. Is, you know, she told me the story herself as well. And it's just like, that's so great to hear. So, you know, there's this, there's a lot of work that leaders can do. And this is kind of where I want to end off, you know, our discussions is there's a lot of work that you've done. You've always like continuous improvement, and it's been your practice to be the best that you possibly can be. But there's also this responsibility of your team. They have to choose to lean in.
Yeah.
You can work as hard as you can to make people feel welcome and included, but ultimately your team have a choice to do so.
You know what I find interesting here, as well as Livingston, Rockhampton, my first place of work in Australia, is that people tend to follow you.
Yeah.
If you are positive and you are eager, they become positive and eager as well. So if you set a good example, they follow that. That is why if you set a bad example, you create a whole basket full of rotten eggs. And for me, I cannot, you know, I will never be Elon Musk or Simon Sinek. I will never be a world-renowned person. But every time I meet somebody again that said to me, you made a difference in my life, thank you. That is the biggest reward that there is, not $10 million in the bank. No. That is the biggest reward for me, is that, and I'm, you know, you meet people and I said, oh, we really enjoyed working with your team. Yeah. That is such a compliment. And then I always say to my team, because we had people who installed fairy lights, colorful lights, and they worked with the team because it was a very complex project. And the guy went to the mayor and he said to the mayor, this contractor said it was such a pleasure working with this team because the people were helpful, friendly. And I went back and I said, thank you guys, this is fabulous. So for me, that is the reward. And that's what I love about being in a management / leadership position, is the ability to help other people to become their best.
But they still got to choose it, you know, and because there are times that, and you would have come across this, I know, of, you know, people who don't choose to lean in and, you know, who don't choose to be included. Because I know when you know, I sit with you and your team and, you know, we've got this inclusion, we've got this feeling of people are turning up because they want to be there, not because they've been told to. But that's a choice, you know, and some people choose and it's like, no, you need to do more to make me feel welcome. And it's like, no, I'm actually doing enough. You need to choose to lean in.
We have talked about it, and sometimes it is a very sticky situation.
Yeah.
One thing I have decided quite recently is that I will no longer try to be liked.
Yeah.
I was a Labrador for all my life. I just want everybody to love me. And that is not a good thing. I've decided I'll be a sausage dog. I like it when people feed me and rub my back, but I will go for what I want.
But that's the balance. Remember, we've spoken about, you know, that balance between care and accountability. You know, that's the foundation of compassionate empathy is the balance between logic and emotion. Yeah. Like this is what it is, because if we're trying to be liked all of the time, we end up being nice and it turns us into being an asshole.
Yeah. And when you're nice, it's false. When you try to be nice, it becomes to be false.
For me, it is.
But, you know, the one thing is what I've said now, it doesn't mean it gives you a license to be an asshole. But to be overly nice and you try to please everyone where you go, that simply doesn't work.
No, you don't get a job done.
Yeah, I try to be fair, as I said. Fair is perhaps a better word than just. That sounds very American if you use the word just. The interesting thing is, if I look back at my career, And because I trust people very quickly. I just see how they treat other people, and I see how they treat themselves, and then I trust them. And a while ago, some time ago at a conference, a bloke asked me how many times I had delivered a paper on how to manage a multi-generational workplace.
Yep. Yeah.
At the local government management association.
Yeah.
And he said to me, "You trust people. How many times have they stabbed you in the back?" And I had to really think. And I said, I can think of 3 times.
Yeah.
And that's a lifespan of 30 years in a professional world. So that's very little, once a decade.
I'm generous with my trust. I am, but it's not just throwing a blanket out to every person. It's I trust based on character and competency. And so I place my trust well. I don't just go, I'm trusting you with everything, and then they're having to meet my standards of stuff. Like, that's cruelty, I think.
Yeah. I agree.
Right? There's discussions, there's, navigation and a negotiation, but, there's an evaluation also that happens of what level of trust am I putting out there? And I've not been stabbed in the back. I've been hurt because I did assume things instead of asking things, but that's on me. That's not on the other person.
It is ironic that you say that. I have been hurt, H-U-R-T, many times in my life, but it was mostly my own doing. And that is, you've also said, assuming. I sometimes, I meet Susan, and I think she's fallen in love with me. Meanwhile, Susan just thinks I'm a weird guy who's going to buy her a drink. Then you fall in love with a person, they break your heart. That's your assumption. That's you. So I heard mostly in my life was my own. I was the result of the hurt is as a result of my decisions.
Yeah. Wonderful. Look, and we can talk forever and ages on all of this. And I just wanted to be able to, I guess, gift a lot of other people with our discussions, because we always have such robust conversations around leadership and around like how can we do better? How can we learn more? How can we grow and improve and connect in with people? So, and this is going towards our newsletters that we're going to be putting out monthly, that 1 degree shift, that opening of perspective.
That's a lovely name. I like it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, because I don't want people thinking, I got to do all of this now. No, there's just these small incremental things that we do, and, we find efficiencies in them. We practice, we play, and we're just giving ourselves the opportunity to be okay with figuring it out with people around us.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I always love talking to you, and we enjoy chewing the fat,
Or having a glass of wine instead.
That's nothing wrong with that.
Chewing
the fat with a glass of wine, that's a really good combination.
There we go. Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Julie. It was lovely speaking to you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Welcome back. What a conversation. There are so many takes from that conversation with Cecil, so many learning points. And what I really want to leave you with is a few of the actions along the way. It's this idea of, I don't have to be the holder and the keeper of all of the knowledge in the room or the expertise in the room. That's why we employ people. And I really want you to sit in that and understand that if you're turning up into a space to lead people, how about leading thinkers, doers? It changes how you're going to turn up. The next aspect that I really want to leave with you is how we do this. How do we include the people around us so they can do the best that they can? The Edward de Bono 7 Hats activity is something that I think is a game changer for every single leader. It's this idea of how do we open up the table, open up the floor for there to be more ideas, more encompassing, for people to contribute and to participate. And what it is, it's very much likened to the 4 stages of psychological safety. There's a great book, and I'll put it in the notes. I always have it with me. It's just one of those ones that I always lean into. And it's Timothy Clark's The 4 Stages of Psychological Safety. And they talk about, this is the one there. That's back to front. There you go. They talk about, inclusion, safety, and we got to start there. And the 7 Hats does that, the practice of having a construct to be able to have these inclusive conversations is really important, because that leads to then learner safety, being able to fail. Cecil said, like, here's big audacious stuff, go do it. If it fails, what have we learned from it? And in and around that, you know, did you work hard? Yeah. Did you work well? Okay. Well, then what are the gaps? And then it goes to contributor safety, being able to have your people feel safe to contribute whatever's in their head, heart, knowledge, understanding, experience, and all of those other aspects, means that you're going to be a high-performing team, because you're gathering all of that. And then to be able to have the challenger safety. As Cecil says, and I've done this a few times, it's just like, mate, I disagree with you. I think you're full of shit. And he's just gone, no, okay, tell me more. And being able to have that ability, and then him to sit back and say, I want to know more. How does this influence what I've currently thought, the data that I've currently had? What more data is there? Oh, great. Perspective shift. It opens, it widens. And so these are the degree shifts that we can be doing. So check out the newsletter. We've got some really great content in there for you. There's a lot of information that we're wanting to give you this year of all of the things that I've been learning specifically in the past 6 years in developing the mental health first aid training. But from the studies, the executive MBA, leading people, you know, the 30 years that I've had in just trying to figure all this shit out myself. So we're wanting to be able to gift you with the tried and the true and the proven research and activities and actions and behaviors through the years. So thank you for listening. We'd really appreciate your feedback. We'd really appreciate your reviews as well. Let other people know that, you know, we're here and what we're trying to do and what we're trying to achieve, because what we're here for is transforming the way we connect. So I'm Julie Gillespie. Thank you for listening, watching. We can't wait to see you again next time.